Dark Crobat is a staple archetype of base Neo, as well as Neo-On, for its ability to deal quick, small amounts of damage without actually attacking. From evolving from Zubat into Dark Golbat, you deal 10 damage. From Dark Golbat into Dark Crobat, you deal 20 damage. And that's enough to knock out a baby. Because this damage isn't from an attack, it bypasses both the baby rule and focus band. But there's one variant of this deck that I haven't covered on the channel yet, and the reason that I wanted to cover it this time is because it features a type of card that doesn't get a lot of spotlight, and that's light Pokemon. Aside from Light Golduck, you don't really see light Pokemon show up very often in the metagame, and that's not even the light Pokemon that's in this deck. Instead, we are using Light Machoke solely for its return home attack, which you can pull off for only 1 energy, which is super helpful in base Neo. The return home attack lets you take a Crobat off of your bench and shuffle it right back into your deck with any cards attached to it. So even if you have a tool card or an energy card attached to it, all of those are going right back into your deck, which not only protects your Zubats and Golbats from getting knocked out by opposing Crobats or potential Gust or Double Gust, it's also increasing the availability of those evolution cards, your Dark Golbats and your Dark Crobats, in your deck so they can be more readily available. So let's say you've already got 2 Dark Crobats down on the bench, but you have a Zubat that needs evolving. You can just use Machoke's return home attack, return one of those Crobats to your deck, and then next turn use a Boss's Way or any other search tool that you have available to pull it straight out of your deck, evolve that Zubat up, and streamline that evolution damage process just a little bit more than your typical Crobat build is going to do. That is the primary combo for this deck. Let's get into the deck list. We will be starting with 3 copies of Cleffa, which is a bit risky if you are expecting any mirror matches against other Crobat decks, but Cleffa is such a good setup card. That's why it's in every base Neo deck and every Neo-On deck. That hand refreshment is going to get you all the cards that you need to start out your game. Especially if you somehow start with a Zubat rather than a Machop. Machop's going to be a much better start because it has 50 HP. It can deal a decent chunk of damage for only 1 energy. 1 energy is all you're going to need when you evolve up into Light Machoke. So that's your ideal start. Maybe start off just attacking with Machop until you know that your opponent's starting to build momentum, and then that's when you start hitting them with all of your bat evolutions. You're pretty much never going to be using Gentle Kick. I can only imagine a few scenarios where you can actually pull that off and it'd be useful, but you still have it at your disposal since Light Machoke is more than likely going to be your active Pokemon for most of the game. Of the Zubat available, I prefer this one, mainly because of Poison Spray. You can chuck a Rainbow Energy onto this Zubat. The amount of damage on the Zubat's not going to matter because you're probably going to send it back to your deck anyway. But the Poison Spray can set up your opponent to force a swap, especially up against chunkier decks like a Steelix or a Chansey, which do give Crobat variants a lot of trouble. These decks are built to knock out low HP Pokemon before they even really have a chance to evolve up or attack, so cards like Chansey and Onix do get in the way of the strategy of this deck. But that's why the general focus for Dark Crobat variants are baby assassination. Like every other variant, it may seem like just from the deck list that it's not going to be dealing a lot of damage because Dark Golbat is only going to be dealing 10 damage when it's evolved. Dark Crobat is only going to be dealing 20 damage whenever it evolves up. But you have to keep in mind that you can have 4 Zubats all on your bench. If you evolve all of them on the same turn, that's 40 damage. If you evolve them all again the next turn, which isn't out of the question considering the trainer base, that's 80 damage. And you have your Light Machoke in the active position as your support in just getting all of those bats back into your deck so you can start the process all over again and keep a steady stream of evolving bats. 3 copies of Boss's Way to grab those evolution cards out of your deck after you have sent them back to the deck with Machoke. 3 copies of Nightly Garbage Run so that you are recycling the few energy cards that are in this deck, as well as those evolution cards if Dark Crobats or Golbats get knocked out. Computer search for when you're in a pinch and you need that one specific card in your deck, no matter what it may be. You can computer search it out with 2 copies of Item Finder as well, so that if you need to recycle a specific trainer card out of your discard pile, you have that option. Because you want to keep that active light Machoke in the active position for as long as possible, using its attack turn after turn, you're going to want to slap some focus bands on there. So 3 copies of focus band for those 3 light Machokes. And then to stall your opponent as much as possible, pulling Pokemon into the active position that aren't ready to attack yet. More of a defensive play to protect your light Machamps while you're getting off those 1 energy attacks. We got Double Gust. This deck is not going to care about Double Gust, especially if you're using it when Cleffa or one of the bats is in the active position, because they all have free retreat. So you're basically able to manipulate however you want with that Double Gust. Pull out Pokemon that don't have any energy on them, that aren't ready to attack yet, maybe one that has a high retreat cost, whatever's going to get it stuck in the active position, so you can evolve and devolve your bats over and over again and start stacking damage on those benched Pokemon. Couple copies of Last to deal with cards like Gust of Wind or even potentially energy removal, even though it's not a super big deal in this deck. And then a full playset of Hyper Devolution Spray, which is kind of the lesser method to Machoke's first attack, in which you're really just removing the top evolution card as opposed to sending the entire Pokemon back to the deck. So Hyper Devolution Spray is going to be helpful in just getting that 20 damage from Crobat over and over again, instead of evolving fully up and dealing that stacked damage turn after turn. For the gyms, I got 2 copies of Breeder Fields to help get those bats into your hand, and then also Narrow Gym to narrow your opponent's options for Pokemon that they can use on their side of the field. This is especially useful against decks like Damage Swap that require a lot of different Pokemon and moving pieces in order to reach the desired effect. So if you limit the amount of Pokemon they can have on their side of the field, you're going to be able to stack damage a lot easier and knock out those heavy hitters much faster. But Narrow Gym is more of a mid to late game play. Got a full playset of Rainbow Energy in here so that you can use Zubat's Poison Spray when you need to. Like I said, it's not really going to matter how many damage counters are on your bats, because a lot of the time you're just going to be sending them straight back to your deck, so the damage counters won't matter. And then the deck's going to be topped off with 6 Fighting Energy. Doesn't seem like a lot, but remember that Light Machoke is only using 1 energy to attack, and we do have Last to combat the removals. I've seen quite a few deck lists for this type of variant that include 1 copy of Light Machamp just for that beatdown attack, because dark Pokemon are pretty common in this format, especially Pokemon that have dark in their name because of the Rocket set, and then later the Neo set full of dark Pokemon that found their way into a lot of different decks. And so that is an option for if you just want a backup attack to surprise your opponent and deal some heavy damage on one of their dark Pokemon. Beatdown is a pretty solid option, but I found in playtesting that it wasn't all that useful. Even when I was up against dark Pokemon, just the base combo between Machoke and Crobat was enough to win. Could also be potentially useful against Chansey, so that you could attack with Machamp and then finish it off with the Crobat damage, because like I mentioned earlier, big basics are the largest hurdle for this deck to overcome. And so potentially another option is to use Poke Flute. And this goes for any Crobat variant, because if you're playing an experienced opponent, they're gonna know on turn 3 or whatever, whenever you knock out their baby Pokemon by evolving up into 1 Crobat, they're gonna say, okay, well, you've knocked out my initial Cleffa, you've knocked out an Elekid, but I'm not going to fall for that again. I'm only going to play high HP Pokemon the rest of the game, and yeah, it might be slower for me, but it's going to completely disrupt your strategy. Well, in that case, you just use Poke Flute, be a total dick, and put that baby Pokemon right back onto their bench so you can knock it out all over again. So when you are up against a Metal Chansey, a lot of that deck relies on Unknown In and a few baby Pokemon. So if you keep returning those to your opponent's bench, you're still going to be able to get knockouts, even though Chansey's not going to be one of them. Same for a Steelix deck. Even that type of deck is using cards like Elekid that you can knock out and return to the bench at least 3 or 4 times, if you have Pokeflute in the deck, that is. I didn't include this card in the main deck list because when I was playtesting, I wasn't playing against a lot of big basic decks. I was playing against a lot of other different rogues, just stuff that I had built and was using to playtest against it. So the Pokeflute wasn't all that useful when you're up against some of these Pokemon that only have like 60 or 70 HP anyway. It was much easier to just rely on the Machoke Crobat combo to continuously deal small amounts of damage. But if you valued viewers have had a different experience, let me know down in the comments. Also, let me know what your ideal build of a Crobat deck is like. There's a ton of them out there. Let me know what your favorite is. Also, let me know what types of decks or other vintage Pokemon content you would like to see on the channel. Also, clicking the like button and sharing the content is always appreciated, as I am still a small growing channel. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next video. Bye.